Yeah. How's it going? Good.
Hi there, and welcome to This Guy Edits, where you can see this guy edit and this guy direct.
Action.
I knew that I wanted to direct. I love shooting, I love acting, but I really love this part the most. If we don't have the shot, we're not gonna have the scene, and I'm so obsessed with it. That obsession doesn't serve me.
If you have any questions...
I don't have a better outfit on.
So today we're gonna take some of your questions and we're just gonna run through them, and Mark is kind enough to come back. He came back and he's gonna answer those questions.
Happy to be here.
Thank you for dressing up this time.
I know, I said that I was going to do that last time. I'm even more underdressed than I was last time. And a disclaimer, I'm sunburned and my skin's peeling off my face.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Question number 1. Craig wants to know, how does the director feel if he had to do his own editing versus handing off the material to an editor to do the editing for him?
Hi, Craig. I don't know. I'd be too much. If me personally, a lot of respect for guys who can do that. I just don't think I could really do that, especially on these type of films that are as personal as these are. And yeah, I just need the space. I need another vision.
Yep.
I need someone else's input to tell me what they see.
Do you do some editing on any software, on anything?
iMovie. A little bit of iMovie. Vine.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I can't do Vine.
Little loops on Vine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
You know.
Question number 2 comes from Sonny Brown. Sonny wants to know how much arguing happens over the course of the edit.
Sonny Brown. None thus far. I don't think Sven and I have ever had an argument. Have we?
I don't think so.
I don't think, no.
Which is maybe a problem, I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe
we should be.
Maybe we should be. You know, I did watch Sven's last episode about fight in the editing room. I was expecting some big stuff dropping there. Yes, maybe we should. I don't know. I think we've never argued, but we definitely, sometimes we have different points of view, and that's great. And that's part of the process. That's what makes it great. So to go back to the first question, that's why I prefer it this way. I think when it's too singular, I don't know. The work isn't as good.
Okay, Scott says, thanks for sharing the process. I would like to know if Mark is holding an idea of how we would edit the scene while shooting it.
Yes, not as crazy razor sharp as some other filmmakers that I've worked with. A good example is my friend Edgar Wright, who directed me in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. He's very meticulous. He's edited the film in his mind. And, you know, that movie in particular is very heavily storyboarded as well, too. And, you know, to work with someone like that, it's really cool to see and to witness. And for me, it's looser than that. I instinctively kind of know what I want it to be and making sure that we're covering it enough. But in terms of specific, strong editing choices, no.
Have you ever been on a movie set where the editor actually came on set?
Yes.
As you remember?
Scott Pilgrim is a great example. And that, you know, too, it's a whole different kind of world, right? You have something that's so heavily reliant on so many moving parts, special effects as well. So, and also on smaller films too, you know? Sven's never done that.
No, I have on green screen shots, but usually I try not to go. Knobtop wants to know, what do you do when the shots that you really need for a scene just aren't there? They aren't working for you as the editor. I guess that's for me. Aren't happy with them for the edited scene that you want to create. Every time I don't have a shot, most of the time it turns out to be a blessing. Like, for example, we're going to see a scene today where actually we lost the cartridge. And I think whenever you need to make something work because there was a problem and there's a limitation, you have to come up with a solution that you would have never thought about. And then it becomes interesting just because of that.
I mean, when that happened on the day, or we found out the next day, it was devastating, but it was almost kind of like, it happens. It was like everything had been going great up until that point, and something fucked up has to happen when you're making a movie. Generally, there's a lot of fucked up things that happen. And so that, though, in particular, like getting in there and, oh, we didn't get that thing we needed. It's like the editing process as a whole for me is like, what are all the gifts that we have going into it, as opposed to like, oh no, what have I done? What do we have? How are we going to make this work? It's like, let's see what magic we're being given, you know?
How the diverse footage you build your scene upon related to the actual script? I know it's not important for what you're trying to convey here, but shouldn't conflict already start with the writing? You can't edit something in that isn't there, you know what I mean? So you guys either knew that you would fill in blanks with different material as you were shooting that first unedited, non-conflicting take. I'm going to explain what he's referring to. Or you were making up the scene as you went along. Both versions seem to rely more on improvisation than a finished screenplay. I'm just asking because you said this for an actual feature, not just for some random example, and I'd like to gain insights into the process. So there's one episode, I don't know if you've seen it, but I'm actually like taking the scene apart, and I'm instilling some conflict in there that wasn't maybe originally intended in the script.
Yeah.
Organized tools, anything.
I heard you was down with Mo.
So that's a question that actually a lot of people is like, why is it not written in? And I have an answer, but you go ahead.
Well, there was plenty of conflict written in to what I wrote. I mean, the whole story, the whole journey is based off of conflict. I mean, that's storytelling in general. Stakes. Part of my process of how I make films is that when I write a treatment or a script, I try and load it with as many stakes as possible, and the conflict and the tension. But also, when you're making a movie that's heavily reliant on improvisation, in my constructing of the treatment, I'm embracing the fact that this is going to grow in some way. And part of that is also knowing that there are moments within what I'm doing that are going to be found in the editing room. Thank God I know that there are ways that we can do things in the edit to maybe make it even better than I could have possibly performed in that moment. I used to be in scenes with other actors where I'm like, they're fucking terrible. I would think, I'm like, they're not engaging with me. I'm not feeling the scene. Like, where are you? You're not in the scene. I'm like, this is going to be terrible. And I watched the movie and they're fucking incredible. In fact, they're even more interesting and better than I am in the scene. And I'm like, how did that happen? I'm like, oh, they're cognizant of the fact that we're making a movie. We're not doing a play. And they're acting in these little they're finding little moments. So there's a lot of start and stop and stuttering within the lines and saying a line a couple times and things like that, which can be really jarring to a scene partner. But for an editor, it's just like jewels. You're like, oh, wow. Other actors and directors just doing a take where it's like, just make some faces. Like, we're going to do one where just like react.
Yeah.
Just look. You know, and those are little things that you can use to enhance performance and to create tension and stakes and conflict that just propel the story.
And I want to also mention, when I started working for James Cameron, he actually once told me, every time when he finishes a movie, he feels like now he's actually qualified to make that movie. Yeah. And he wants to do it again. So he feels like he has no clue what he's doing. And he's going through the process of making the movie. And then at the end, he's like, oh, yet now I understand what this movie is or should be. Now I should be making this movie.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, with every project, it is really a journey. And there's so much discovery along the way. You can have the best intentions with the script, but once you're shooting it and things happen, and once you're editing it and things happen, it'll change and it'll be something different.
Yeah, it's totally a balance. One of the first big mistakes I made as a filmmaker, the first movie straight out of the gate, is that I was like, it's got to be it's all on the page, and so that mentality that it's all on the page translated to like on the day, like forcing stuff too much, not reading the energy of the day, the nuances and the differences that the performers were trying to inject and people's input. It was too rigid. That is way harder to manufacture.
Joel has a question for Mark. Are there any pieces of advice other directors have shared with you that have really stuck with you? If not direct advice, maybe something you gleaned from just being on set with them.
Every director that I've really admired, that I've worked with, has a combination of being really prepared and the ability to let go at the same time. Someone like Jarmusch was like, it was huge for me. It was so great to see someone who's just unabashedly themselves and are making movies exactly the way they want to make it.
Basti Tarantino. I have a question for Mark and for me. I'll do it in German because it's easier. So now I have to do the work and translate. First of all, he's a big fan of you, Mark. He's seen your 3 movies and it has helped him in his style as a director and editor. And the question is, you mentioned that The End of Love was kind of a pivotal moment for you, and you sort of decided this is the kind of movie that you want to make. Is there something specific that has inspired you to adopt this kind of style?
Yeah, yes, there has been. First of all, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thanks, man. That's so cool that you've seen the movies that I've made. I really appreciate that. That still blows my mind that happens. And it's super encouraging to hear stuff like that. The birth of my filmmaking came out of my experiences as an actor. The work I was doing in between takes was far more interesting than what I was doing while the camera was rolling. And that irritated the shit out of me, you know? They'd say cut, and then I'd do the lines to myself, or I'd be a little bit more adventurous or in between takes, and to try and get the thing right. And it was great. And they're like, all right, rolling and action. And I try to do that, and I couldn't do that. I'm like, this is so fucked up. Going into the making of The End of Love, I was like, I want to create the environment to just inhabit the space and live in it. So this idea of rolling and cut and all that stuff, so it doesn't get in the way, so I could just be in the moment. And so I could feel that as a performer, because I also knew that would translate to the type of vibrancy and realistic, authentic moments in the movie that I wanted there to be. So that's really where it started. And then I also, too, was a few movies. When I saw Kids, I was 14 or 15 years old. And that movie really fucked me up because I was like, wow, that's what it's kind of like. And I know those kids, And then ironically ended up becoming friends with Rosario and Leo, people in that movie who I really admired. And so there's something at that time period and coming out of Philly and New York, and then Dogma stuff was hitting, and then I went and worked with Vinterberg and Von Trier, and kind of this idea of what they were kind of up to was really amusing to me in a way. I don't know, just things that were a little left to center, oh, it's a movement, And then when I realized, oh, this is kind of a very specific thing, and I don't really know any other filmmakers doing stuff in this way, and as personal with family and stuff, that's cool, because I like things that are unique and different.
Well, he asked me what my inspirations are. Since I'm name-dropping Cameron a lot, he wants to know if there's anybody else. I actually got into film because of Hitchcock. When I was a kid, I watched some of these movies as they came to TV, like Birds and Psycho. And there's a book by Francois Truffaut, who's a French New Wave filmmaker who interviewed Hitchcock. And he sort of has an interview and asks him, how did you do it? How did you make these movies? And I realized that Hitchcock had a very specific idea of what emotional involvement is of an audience. The idea of suspense and getting them engaged, and it's just completely fascinated me. So whenever I tackle any scene or it's always in the back of my mind, okay, what's the emotional involvement of the audience and how can I get them involved? Those are all the questions, except I left one here, which I think is a good one to end on, which is, once we're moving on into the fine cut stage, what is really the process at that point for the two of us in terms of working together?
That's the fun, scary part. It's like it's just looming kind of right around the corner. I love that part. It's looking at the whole thing. And it's sometimes we've done radical stuff. We have this linear way that the story has been told, and we're like, well, we're gonna put this here. We're gonna take this thing that was in the beginning and now it's here. Or what if we, and that's really fun and fascinating to see, just like what that does and how one little shift like that just can dramatically affect the way you experience the story.
The role play is going to shift. I will become the listener, you will become the storyteller, and then it's just watching the movie together. You are taking it in and you're communicating what you feel. What are some things where you feel it's lacking or it should go in a different direction? And then we're going to try and figure out some of the big picture restructuring, reconfiguring certain scenes, and then start to just hone. But thank you so much for your questions. They were awesome, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.